Super Rugby AU final regular season round. These games, this review is coming to you the day after the fact. Usually I like to get them wrapped up on the same day as the games, but there was a stretch of 3 games last night. We had this one, then North-South, then this one, and I just got up early to watch a European game, so I wanted to go to bed. So forgive me for that. But it must be said, final round of AU was something of a cracker, and the recent rounds have been really good. So I think for all the negative press this competition got early on, I reckon it's absolutely lived up, if not exceeded expectations in terms of the stuff that's been on display. These games have been something of a joy to watch, and I'm really pleased. I hope this bodes well for Aussie rugby, but we will have to wait and see what the longer-term picture is. The first game is a bit of a brutal one for the Force, man. 34-30. The Rebels needed to win by 4 points or more to guarantee that they would knock the Waratahs out and they would pip into 3rd spot in the conference. And look at that scoreline, 34-30. The only thing that's kind of pleasing, I guess, because admittedly, I would have liked to see the Force get a famous win. But the two nomadic teams, neither of them had a stable base. It was hard on both these teams with the pandemic. But if the Rebels had won by less, if it had been 32-30, that I think would have been worse overall because they wouldn't have got what they wanted and they wouldn't have got what they wanted. At least this way, the Rebels got something to show for it. So congratulations to the Rebels. After the performance they put in against the Brumbies, that other game a few weeks ago, it's kind of nice to see them get there, make it. I know people who hate the Waratahs will be pretty pleased that the Rebels made it. The Force gave it one hell of a shot. And this game had me actually thinking, because remember this was on before North versus South. I hope the North versus South game can live up to this one, because this one was the gift that they just kept on giving, man. It was an absolute cracker from Newcastle, a very sunny afternoon. I've got some notes. I'll try and go over the main points from what I can remember from last night. It was 3-0 early to the Force. I remember they were winning some penalties at the scrum and at the breakdown. The Rebels blew at one point what seemed like an absolute sure thing try down the right wing when I think Tamua threw it and Michael Wells and Tom Pincus kind of got in each other's way. So they ended up not being able to convert, but they did go back for the penalty anyway. Eventually, the Rebels were clinical. A 5-metre scrum, a move from Tamua. They checked that there wasn't an obstruction on Godwin, but it was more that Godwin made a bad defensive read and he let Pincus go through. So the first try was to the Rebels. It was 7 points to 3. And worryingly for the Force, and it's been a little bit of a fixture throughout their fixtures, too many charge downs, man. This one all started. The 5-metre scrum actually started from a Force getting charged down when they were trying to make a clearing kick. And there was 3 or 4 of them in this game. Very, very worrying. After 8 games, you should have cleaned that aspect up. And it was a bit costly in this one. The Force, though, they bounced back. Tafu got a try on 20 minutes. It was a line break from John O'Lance. McGregor with the inside ball, and pretty bad from the Rebels to concede so quickly after scoring. They missed the conversion, but the Force go in front 8 points to 7. Tumua kicks a penalty to make the Rebels back in front 10-8, and another one to make it 13-8. And then Hodge kind of adds to the pain with a 28-minute try. Again, after another charge down. Very costly. So the Rebels gathered the ball. Or with the pass, some people thought it was forward. I think probably backwards out of the hands. Momentum. I'll go with that. It's a big prop getting a try assist, so we'll take that. 20 points to 8. Now, 20 points to 8. It kind of looks like the script is written. Oh, yeah, the Force start with a bit of a flash. And then the guys kind of can't keep up for the rest of the game. The established Super Rugby side is able to pull away. But no, not in this game. Or had a try chalked off for a bit of obstruction. That one was obstruction for Pincus on McGregor. And that's another costly one for the Rebels, to be honest, because I don't think even if McGregor wasn't obstructed, I can't see him stopping the big prop from that far out. So that was a bit of a silly one for the Rebels to let go. That's potentially 2 tries blowing. And then 39 minutes, pretty much right on half-time, Andrew Reedy gets the first of his 2 tries. It was a great set piece, much needed, and they missed the conversion though, so it's 20 points to 13. So that's kind of game on. If the Rebels had scored again to make it like 27-8, that would have been looking like it was going to be a hiding. But the Force, maybe against the script and the fact that shows these guys have been getting better week in, week out, made it 20 points to 13. Half-time, there's only been 1 knock-on in that whole first half, which is phenomenal. 156 to 187 is the run meters, with the Force edging it. Force have had more possession, 62%, more territory, 54%. Both sides tackling very well. The Rebels in the 90s, the Force in the high 80s. Penalties conceded as 7 to 6, with the Rebels having conceded 1 more, so relatively high, I guess. Second half gets underway, and it's the Rebels, man. Andrew Reedy gets the second of his tries. It's a maul try. Reedy kind of had to roll to get it, and the TMO had to look at it to make sure he wasn't like doing a double movement, but it was all good. And the conversion made it 20 points apiece. Very worrying time for the Rebels and very pleasing for the Force. 48 minutes, the TMO had a potential try for the Rebels, but they called it short, and the TMO was a bit stingy with the Rebels in this one, to be honest. There were a few tries that they had called off. Meeks, about a minute later, was held up, so they had to do a dropout. 55 minutes, the Force kick a penalty, 23-20, they're in front. Pincus gets a yellow card for a deliberate knock-on, and now it's really starting to go to custard for the Rebels at that point. Capped off with Stunder getting a try during the yellow card. The TMO checked it, but they were happy there was no obstruction. 30 points to 20, 7 points in the yellow card. And it's kind of the opposite moment from that 20 points to 8 moment. Like the Force, they've got the extra man. They're a 10-point lead. Remember, the Rebels need to win by 4 points. It's looking like it's going tragically wrong for the Rebels, and it's going to be a glorious night for the Force. However, the momentum shifts back. Immediately, the Rebels head back, and it's a very disappointing one if you're a Force fan. Dane Hallett-Petty is an offload from Hodge to like Korobidi, who gets it to Dane Hallett-Petty, and he goes over for a try, and he looks pretty mad, to be honest, Dane Hallett-Petty. So it makes it 27 points to 30, 7 apiece for the yellow card, and it gets worse for the Force. The momentum shifts all the way back the other way because Ralston gets a silly yellow card from the kickoff. He smashed into Phillip, who was being lifted in the air, and you didn't need to do that. That one was a bit of a brain fart, but there you go. Sometimes that happens. Korobidi ends up getting a try on, I think it's like 72 minutes, but there's a forward pass in that one. Surprised they had to go to the TMO for it because we kind of called it as it was being thrown from Matt Phillip. Frisbee kicks it out on the full, which doesn't make things any better for the Force. And then Lee Warner gets a yellow card for a cynical turnover at a maul. So the Rebels are now a man up, and they knock it over the line. They get a 5-meter scrum. The Force can't maintain their scrum. The Rebels get advantage. They go 9+ phases. The TMO has a look. No try. Another TMO call. Ma'afu said there's no try next to the post, but they eventually give it to Elof on 79 minutes. It's a brutal finish for the Force. They get the conversion sure enough, so it's 34-30. The Rebels were really putting on all that pressure at the end, and the Force really tried but couldn't quite hold. Still, big respect to the Force guys, man. They came bloody close to getting a result, and they'll have their own things they'll look back at that, kind of cost them, like I mentioned, a couple of yellow cards, but unnecessary, but they certainly put up a good fight, and it's been an absolute pleasure having the Force back on our screens week in, week out, so let's hope we see more of that. The future of Super Rugby remains still up in the air, but from what we've seen, I think we'll be pretty pleased. And congrats to the Rebels, man. You guys were down by more than enough to make it seem like you guys were dead and buried. 20 points to 30, and you need to win by 4. Needed to score 14. Man in the bin. It didn't look likely, but they also showed up as well and managed to book a game against the Reds, which after that second game was going to look like a pretty tough ask, but we will see. The game finishes with the Force edging the possession, but the Rebels edging the territory. Pretty close. Run meters 383 to 320, so Rebels edging that one. Both sides tackling in the 90s, despite the fact that they Both had a fair few tries scored. Penalties was 13-12, so relatively high. Individuals, Godwin had 12 from 14 tackles, and he generally looked the business this season, I thought, even if he had that one bad defensive read in this game. Dane Halapeti back from injury, 82 run meters, 2 defenders beaten, scores a try. Pretty good. For the Force, man, you take away things like the charge downs, a couple of those yellow cards, and you never know what they could have done. But as I said, pretty pleasing all round to have them back, and we will see what the future holds. The next game, the Reds against the Brumbies. Now, admittedly, this was the third of 3 games for me. I'd had a really rubbish sleep the night before. I was getting pretty weary. My notes for this one are not that extensive. I basically just wrote down the main events and then a few kind of addendums. But yeah, if I've missed stuff, don't blame me, because I was a bit knackered for that one. It starts off with a Reds try to Liam Wright, and it's a sweet little move. Jock Campbell's really looking confident for that one. It's a great offload. They missed the conversion. It's 5-0. Kurandrani on 21 minutes blows an absolute sitter of a try. It's a great move from the Brumbies. The great passing in the build-up. And then all he has to do is just kind of take it over the line and score. But Tate McDermott starts to tackle him, and he just loses the ball. It's a bit of a stinker for Kurandrani. So yeah, good defense from the Reds, you'd have to say. They kick a couple of penalties, so it's 11-0 to the Reds at one point, and then Fairway Saltier gets a try on 36 minutes. Now, he looked good coming back from injury as well. Very dangerous ball runner. That one in the hands, it was Campbell Stewart to Chris Fairway Saltier, and then it's 18-0. It's looking pretty ominous for the Brumbies at that point. Remember, this game is kind of a dead rubber, but I think psychologically, this result is going to be a pretty pleasing one for Brad Thorne's guys to get into the heads of the Brumbies guys. But yeah, Samu does get a try right before halftime. Nice angled run from him. Good passing, and 18 points to 7. They probably needed that try going into that second half, because it wasn't going their way. The Reds had dominated the possession, 57%. They have more territory, 52%. The Brumbies had 7 knock-ons in that first half to the Reds 2. Pretty appalling. Run meters 135 to 113. Reds made 46 tackles in the first half, Brumbies 65. So you'd say statistically and on the scoreboard, the Brumbies were a wee bit under the pump. Reds kick a penalty on like 65 minutes. This is how sparse my notes are for the start of that second half. So it's 21-7. Hegarty misses a penalty before like 75 minutes. It's a bit of a shocker since he's come on. And right towards the end, Kunzel misses a high ball. He spills it, and McDermott's the guy to react. He's on the right wing by that point, and yeah, he gets the try. So it finishes 26-7. I looked at the stats. Run meters 326 to 409. So there was a fair bit of running, but the knock-ons were pretty prevalent in this game. So were the offloads, though. I guess that's kind of a balancing fact. The fact that both these sides, maybe the fact that it was a dead rubber, kind of throwing caution to the wind. The Reds had 15 offloads, and the Brumbies had 14. That's kind of madness. That's really, really high. Position and territory was pretty even, with the Brumbies edging both. Dalgunu had 85 run meters, 4 defenders beaten and 4 offloads. He was a goose stepping and into a bit of everything. Kurandrani had 7 tackles made, 5 tackles missed. I really don't think it was his best outing. I mean, he had a couple of weeks off. Banks had 111 run meters and 8 defenders beaten, so he was having a pretty decent shift at the back as well. Paisami had a big hit on Solomon Akata, so you can see there was still a bit of feeling in this game, even if it was, not all that important what result happened. I thought Wright was caught out a couple of times defensively, biting in. Tupou was looking pretty dynamic as always. The crowd was like 9,000. It looked pretty good. Were these guys having to be socially distanced or what? Pretty good crowd. They said it was the biggest crowd at Suncorp since lockdown. So I know the Broncos aren't having a good season, right? But yeah, very, very pleasing. So I think that's also a testament to the state of the competition. The fact that you can get 9,000 people there to a game which is essentially not going to matter. But yeah, against the Brumbies, who are going to be in the final. Reds will meet the Rebels. Very pleasing stuff. Very pleasing stuff all around. So yeah, good games, as I mentioned. Bit of a psychological win for the Reds to put some doubt in the Brumbies' mind before that final. The Rebels absolutely just barely got it done. The Force certainly held their heads high for their finish of the season, even if it does finish winless for them. But yeah, overall, very, very pleasing. You guys let me know your thoughts on the games. How gutted are you for the Force, or are you pretty pleased that the Rebels are going to make it? Who are you picking between the Rebels and the Reds next week? And do you think the Brumbies, with a week off, will be able to reset and still go on to take the title as they are predicted to do? You guys let me know your thoughts. Talk to you again soon. See you guys.